So whether you're a $1 million business or a $10 million business, the process is the same. And the truth of that is proven by franchises. If you buy a really good franchise, like McDonald's, for example, chances are you won't lose money. As a matter of fact, it's almost exceptionally uncommon. So your goal should be to try and run like a franchise. That's pretty much it. They have everything covered. Good franchises, not bad ones, but good ones. They have the locations. They have the systems for the employees to follow, the financial systems. Everything is a system. So the first thing you've got to do is learn. You've got to become educated about what you're doing. And again, I'm glad you're here today. So become open-minded and humbled. Learn from my mistakes, not yours. Do things in the right order. There's a right order for everything. You cannot learn to run until you learn to walk, and first you have to crawl, right? So increase the speed of your continual improvement. So the only way we get better is by improving, slowly but surely. And know when to grow and not to grow. So one of the biggest myths is you need to grow. So how many people have heard, raise your hands, that growth is where it's all at? Raise your hands. Nobody? Nobody here heard that growth is the way to go. Grow, grow, grow. Grow the economy. Grow this, grow that. Well, the truth of the matter is it's not about growing, it's about being better. It's not about growing, it's about being better, being the best. And that can be different types of growth. But it's not more. More is not better. Better is better in everything that you do. Better customers, better suppliers, better education, better people, better systems. Better is better. More is not better. And we're oftentimes confusing the two. So here's an example on the screen of a chart that basically shows improvement. Now this is going to be a horrible thing for you guys to hear, but most of your companies waste 4 hours out of a 10-hour day. So you're operating at 60% efficiency. That's it. So in other words, in a 10-hour day, you could produce 10 hours of work, but you're only producing 6. How many people want to disagree with that here? Anybody? Challenge me? Come on. No? All right. So if you think about it, okay, I'll do a quick question here. What time do you start in the morning? How many people start at 8 o'clock in the morning? Raise your hands. Okay. How many people start at 7 o'clock? Raise your hands. Okay. How many people start at 6 o'clock? Raise your hands. Okay. 6 beats 8. They got 2 more hours of work. Because you can make more money, but you can't make more time. You're running out of time. So if I was competing with you against the company that starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, they're going to do 20% more work. There you go. So, who wants to fix their start times? Anybody? There we go. So, basically this chart shows the difference between your profit, what you pay your people, how much you work or how much work you do, right? And how much waste you have. And the goal is to turn the waste into work with the same overhead. And what happens then is your company starts to improve. It becomes more profitable. You can do more work. You can even become more competitive, right? All of you are competing against yourselves in this industry, not so much others. Like if you're running at 60%, okay, so if you went to the Olympics right now, for argument's sake, and you were a cross-country skier, and you were 6 out of 10, you would lose. You wouldn't even make the podium. Well, you wouldn't even make it to the Olympics, right? So all of you should be at least at the elite Olympic level, and it's completely possible. But it starts with doing the work, which is not 8 o'clock in the morning. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. When I started, I used to work for a company, and their pre-setup happened at 4:30 in the morning. That's how much they valued the time to work. So over 4 years, if you can eliminate that waste, so one change didn't cost money, you started 2 hours earlier, increases your the work that you do, okay? Your overhead's fixed, and that all turns to profit, or more wages to get better people. Who here, raise your hands, who here has no problems getting talent? Raise your hands. Huh. That sounds pretty consistent, right? So everybody's got a problem getting talent. So do you think that maybe offering more money would help you get some talent? Yes or no? Sure it would. But if you're not working enough, you can't afford the talent. The analogy is you might be the best swimmer on the planet, and I throw you in Lake Ontario and I tell you to swim across the lake. And you've got a world record pace, okay? Congratulations, you're a fast swimmer, but you run out of steam and you don't make it to the other side. That's the analogy of working and starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. So you're in business, right? This isn't, unless it's a cottage industry. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna make an exception to that. If you married a doctor or a lawyer or some really rich person, you can do whatever you want. But if that's not the case, unfortunately, you have to work a little earlier. So I came up with this graph to explain what's wrong fundamentally with your business. So the very first piece is leadership. Leadership is the direction of the business. Leadership is deciding what to do and what not to do, okay? The most money you're going to save is by not doing dumb things. So stop doing dumb things. It costs nothing to stop doing dumb things, except you have to figure out what dumb things you shouldn't do, okay? That's leadership. That's you. So guess what? Education, which is what you're doing today, fills that gap. You'll see little gaps. Gaps are bad. Gaps are blind spots. Gaps are ignorance. So then the other thing is things take way too long. Just that line, if you notice there's an XY axis, time is on both sides. If you go to the second column, ideal productivity, it's a straight line through time. So you're not wasting time, there's no gaps. An example of poor decision making is in the sales department, and the decision came from the leadership, by the way, we in our infinite wisdom have decided that we're going to become drywall contractors in the wintertime. Now, we've never done drywall before, and it turns out we're slow and bad. So that's something we shouldn't do. That is a waste of time, right? What are we trying to get? What are we focusing on, right? So in our business, one of the things that we do to increase our productivity and eliminate our waste is we work in the wintertime. And the way we do that is we actually set up tents and tarps and beams with plywood, and we heat the spaces and we work in the wintertime. So we're extending our season, which helps us keep our staff, right? And increase our sales, our overhead's fixed, we make more money. And all the people with tons of money who can't wait are happy to pay the premium to have us work in the winter. So it's the complete opposite of what most people do. They either go and hibernate or they do things that they're bad at. So if you're bare, hibernation's great. But a landscaper, no, not so good. So in this chart, most people have their businesses with economics, in other words, money at the very top, okay? But if I'm going to fix your business, that's not where the problems start. The problems are not the money. Money does not solve problems. It makes more of them, okay? So what we want to do is we want to figure out what is it I should do, what is it I should know. So just for fun, how many of you know or are aware of different leadership styles here? Raise your hands if you're aware of different leadership styles. 1, Do you want to let me know some of your leadership ideas? Okay. So there's different types of leadership styles. Wouldn't it be nice if you knew what type of leader you were? Because there's 7 different leadership styles. And they influence how you treat your employees and what the culture of your business is going to be and how useful you're going to be. I'll give you an example. So I'm up here talking to you. Do you think that I'm a good manager? Raise your hands if you think I'm a good manager. Raise your hands. I'm the worst manager on the planet. Okay? The worst. What I'm good at is making procedure. That's what I'm good at. So I'm a procedural manager. Okay, so I create procedure. And most people don't have this in their toolbox. They don't have a procedural manager because they're different types. Another example of management styles would be charismatic. A charismatic leader. Okay? So a good example would be like a Martin Luther King or an Obama. I mean, let's face it, Obama was cool. You might not like him, but he was a cool guy. So he has charisma, charm. That's a type of leadership style. He can influence people through his charm. The problem is, charm wears thin. There's a whole bunch more that I won't get into. There's autocratic, there's democratic, number of other ones. But the fact of the matter is you need to know what type of leader you are and what your strengths and weaknesses are, because you're your biggest problem. It's not your competitor. None of you are a problem to each other here. You're your own biggest problem. So, choosing the right type of work, human resources, already we can see it's a disaster, right? It's the hardest part of the business by far. So the question is, what are you doing to fix that? That should be your number 1 goal. Process and great people. Great process, great people. Get that right, life is much easier. In the operations is where you do all the work. So operations is a very simple definition. It's getting people, equipment, materials, and subcontractors to do the work correctly on time. That's it. Everything you do up there feeds the bottom. Whatever you do badly up there feeds the bottom. That's why that's kind of the worst messy spot on that graph. So the goal is, if you're wondering what those circles are things that you do over and over and over that you shouldn't have to. So Frank, I'm going to get you up on the easel there. And we're going to make a list of some of those loops that you're going to stop doing. So again, so far we haven't spent any money to fix your business, by the way. We're just going to stop doing bad things. So give me an example of something that you guys do over and over and over that could be resolved once. Once and for all, handled, so the future you don't have to do the same thing over and over again. Does anybody have any ideas? Yeah. Fueling at gas stations. Excellent. Okay, so here's a good question. One of the key things about being organized is not only what you do and how you do it, it's when you do it. People forget about the when. Okay. For fun, how many people fuel their trucks in the morning? Raise your hands. Fuel your trucks in the morning. Raise your hands. You're afraid to raise your hands? So everybody here fuels their trucks at night. Is that correct? Okay, so nobody here fuels in the morning. Okay, check mark. That's good. The reason is that at the end of the day, you finished work, you can't do more work, you can fill up your gas tank because it doesn't compete with the work time that you have to do, right? How many of you fix your concrete saws during the day? Raise your hands. Nobody. Okay, we're doing. How many people fix their concrete saws in the middle of the day? Okay, I need some honesty here, okay? One of the things I need is honesty. Don't worry, I won't remember any of you, and I won't hold it against you. All right, how many of you guys have concrete pull cords that break in the middle of the day? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you have 3 saws per crew? 1? Okay, excellent. The cost of 3 saws is the same as 2 saws, okay? So we're eliminating that loop of having to fix the saw when we should be building work. So there's a huge cost, right? So 3 saws, the saws will last longer, okay? And you won't be fixing it during the day. You'll fix it on Saturday or after work. How many of you have electric saws that are cordless saws, cordless quick cuts? Anybody? Raise your hands. Okay. So what we've done is we have our old school power saws and our small electric battery powered saws. And what happens is, well, there's no cords to fix, right? So I'm eliminating a loop. And how many of you get frustrated when your cord breaks? Come on, raise your hands. All right. So imagine in my company, that's just not an issue. Frustration level goes down. There's an expression, a death by 1,000 cuts, right? And add up all these little things that don't need to happen, and you end up with a nice place to work, right? Anybody else on, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. So you just replace the whole thing, boom, got it. 5 minutes, 5 minutes is 10 minutes. You could have been doing something else in that 5 minutes. But the saw cost is the same. My life cycle of the saw, the only difference. So it's called redundancy. You've got to build redundancy into your systems, right? So backups to backups. Backups to backups. And that goes for people, equipment, whatever it is, you got to have redundancy, especially if you really, really rely on it. Anybody else? Who loads and unloads their tools on their trucks every single day at the shop? All your tools stay on the truck? Or do you actually unload them at the shop? Anybody? Anybody unload at the shop? Okay, good. So ideally, you have a rolling Home Depot on wheels. That's what you want. All the little things you need, plus backup. So those little recurring things that happen over and over again are a waste of time. How many of you, if I move the circle back up to HR, how many of you do interviews with staff and it's a waste of time? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Up high. Hold them up. Be proud. Come on now. It's like therapy. Okay? So, what we do in our company is we have what's called a pre-interview questionnaire. And this questionnaire asks, what skill sets do you have? It lists them. Concrete saw, chainsaw, bobcat. They're all organized, obviously, by group. And it's got beginner, intermediate, advanced, and then you check your box. I don't want to hear about your life story. Can you or can't you? How do you rate yourself? So I send these out, and then if I don't get it back, I save myself an interview, because that means the person's not even procedural. They won't even fill out a timesheet. So I don't want that person in my company. Thank you. Save me time. And then when I do get it back, somebody wants $50 an hour. It turns out they're intermediate on everything. They actually lower the amount of money they ask for through process, okay? And when I do get somebody who's like, column on the right, awesome, 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 I'm like, I want that person. So again, it's a recurring loop. I'm eliminating wasting my time, because that's the one thing I don't have a lot of, by using a system to screen out the good, the bad, and the ugly. Pretty straightforward, right? So in my company, my only job is to make my company better. That's it. I have no other jobs. So I'm going to skip this screen, but you kind of get an understanding of what's wrong with your business. So what happens is most of you try and grow that crazy red line when you should get to the blue line and then become the green lines. You only are allowed to grow once you've fixed your business. Because if you grow, you're going to have more headaches, more problems, compounding your nightmare. So fix things in the right order. Things that cost no money or time. Pretty simple, right? Fix things that cost no money or time. Things that take time during non-billable hours and require sweat equity. So in other words, you yourself are going to do something to make the business better, not your employees. It's only going to cost you time, and it's not going to cost you money. Now, the good news is if you can turn some of that waste into profit, you can invest money into fixing your problems. And you've got a lot of them. Frank's little chart there, it's a bit of an eye-opener. How far away we are from being turnkey, where everything is like, boom, right? So, there's a Japanese philosophy called Kaizen. And it's the foundation of everything. Home Depot, IKEA, those are super well organized stores. True or false? Does anybody want to object to how well or badly? They're not perfect, but relatively speaking, it's pretty amazing how well they're run. You can find what you're looking for pretty much with no help, because there is no help. So part of their model actually is to eliminate the number of people and have you get it yourself, right? Saves a lot of cost. So processes actually reduce labor, which is the goal, and they also reduce frustration. So 5S is an organizational system within Kaizen. It's sort, set, and order, standardize, shine, and sustain. So when I fix companies, what happens is I go in, and whether it's physical or administrative, I'm like, there's 3 piles, real simple. Keep, not sure, get rid of. Keep, not sure, get rid of. How many of you have a bunch of stuff that you don't need that you keep? Don't raise your hands yet, but I want you to raise your hands. Wait, and be honest and hold it up proudly that you have stuff that you shouldn't have. Hold your hands up. All right, that's waste, okay? Get rid of it. How many of you have equipment that sits there that you don't use? Raise your hands. Okay, sell it and spend the money on improving something else. So, sort, standardize, sustain, shine, and straighten is all a function of the Home Depot model. Everything needs to be labeled. Everything needs to have a department, okay? So if you're going to start on this process, and I highly recommend you do, the first thing you do is start with the major categories, like plumbing and electrical. Let's say it might be hardscapes, natural stone, hardscapes, precast, and you would keep whatever you've got, okay, and start to organize it. So what happens is people start putting back stuff where it belongs, and you find what you're looking for. Okay, I want everybody to be honest here. There should be like hands up across the board. How many of you can find whatever you're looking for every time, right away the first time? Raise your hands. 1. All right, come and work for me. So the fact of the matter is we're so disorganized we can't find things. Now, is that frustrating? Sure it is. Who should we blame for that? We'll get to that. You guys are all disorganized. So the good news is you can get organized. It's available to all of you, okay? Doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how great you are with people. You can be organized. There we go. So the next thing is to understand waste. Waste is everywhere. So we can do a little waste exercise here. Okay. So people, let's start with people. Okay. How many of you have to wait for materials to be delivered to your job sites? Raise your hands. Hold them up high. Okay. So one of the things that I like to look at is price, quality, service. Okay? I don't care about paying more money for something if I get service. And the reason is that waiting is far more expensive than saving 10 cents a square foot on the material. I guarantee it. So what we want to do is we want to eliminate waiting. So I would work with a vendor that gets me what I need when I need it, because the 10 cents is peanuts. You're looking at the wrong thing. You're worrying about the wrong thing. Wasted motion. How many of you run out to the Home Depot and pick up stuff in the middle of the day? Raise your hands. Okay, so you're disorganized. So we want to eliminate that wasted motion. You want to write that one, that's a big deal. The Home Depot run. How many of you go for coffee in the morning? Raise your hands. Hold them up high. Okay. I suspect a Keurig machine would be much cheaper for you. Right? Coffee is buy stock in Tim Hortons. That's what I recommend. So there's waiting, there's motion, over processing. How many of you guys sell a Cadillac and then deliver a Mercedes-Benz? Raise your hands. Nobody? We used to have that. People would overproduce. Defects. Okay, I'm not even going to ask you to put up your hands here because nobody here has any warranty work, pretty sure. So we're just going to skip that one. But here's the thing about defects. What happens is defects are death. They cost you the cost of the mistake. They cost you your reputation, okay? They cost you perhaps buying new materials and throwing things out. They cost you the morale of your people having to do the work, right? And I'm going to show you something else, and this is like double death. Frank, I'm just going to jump up here for a second. Flip this over. So, I'm going to draw a graph for you, okay? Hope you can see this. This is your sales curve, okay? Your goal is to flatten it out. This is the line. This is what you do, okay? Where do you think warranty happens? Does it happen in the wintertime? No. It happens here, right at the best part of the season. So instead of doing new work, you're doing rework. Remember we showed you that thing about the waste? This is awful. This is awful. So build it right. It's cheaper to take an extra 10 hours to do something right than to go back and redo it. Okay, so also one other quick tip. Do not sell work here. Figure out how to sell work here. More is not better. Better is better. And better is a function of when you're doing it. That's why we can do work in the wintertime, add to our sales, and the analogy would be you're driving a Ferrari and you're not a very good driver. And you decide because you've got a Ferrari, you're going to run this thing like a madman or a mad woman. And what happens? You crash the car. That's what happens. You grow too fast. You can't take the turn fast enough. So, steady as she goes. Making too much, probably not in the industry. Moving things back and forth. So how many of you have deliveries of brick that comes at the wrong time and then gets put on top of the driveway where you're going to lay the brick? Okay, be honest here. This is like confession, group confession here. Raise your hands if that's happened. All right. So now we've got to move the material out of the way and then move it somewhere else and then move it back. All waste. All waste. There's waste everywhere. So the method and the system of how you work, paying a premium to your supplier, getting it when you want it, is the way to go. Relationships are far more valuable than you think. If you think everything's a transaction and I take and I win and you lose, it's going to be a very lonely life. Everybody can make money and you can eliminate waste and you'll all make way more money, right? The vendor relationships, the relationships with your employees are huge. Because if you look to your right and you look to your left, who can you count on? Or did you try and save money? Saving is a lot less fun than investing in relationships. And letting people make money is okay. So, Too much inventory. So how many of you have a yard full of materials that you just sits there? Anybody? Raise your hands. Hold them up. Hold them up high. Be proud. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm going to give you some math. You buy 10 skids of Permacon. Turns out you only need 9. So what you do, you bring it back to your yard. Now, the Permacon distributor charges you a 25% restocking charge. That drives you mad. Okay? 3 years later, that skid is still there, and the skid's rotted and fallen apart, and it blows apart on you. Okay? You're paying rent for the space to store the stuff. It's adding no value. Okay? Materials typically, if you have a well-run landscape business, should represent about 25% of your costs. Okay? So if you were off on 10 skids by 1 skid, that's 1/10 of 10, and then it's 25% of the 1/10. So what's that work out to? Like 4% or something? Your overall cost is 4% for returning the material, but now you've got the cash, so you can do something better with the money. We are so programmed to be cheap and save, save, save. We forget about investing. And I studied actually some economics, and what I learned was there's a concept called marginal utility, okay? So what extra value am I gonna get out of whatever behavior that I'm doing? And most of us just see what's in front of us, but we don't see the big picture, okay? So if I had that cash, what could I do with it? What could I do with that cash instead of it sitting in bricks? Oh, by the way, now the sun's shining in it and it's fading. And then what happens is you take that brick, you mix it in with some job 3 years later, and the bricks aren't the same and the customer complains. This is what happens, right? So we can fix that. Poor engagement with people. So again, we have poor relationships. There are basically 2 types of people, basically. People who have good intentions and people who have bad intentions. So people who have good intentions, if you put them in a good process, it's unbelievable. People with bad intentions, whether it's a good process or a bad process, is just bad. Most people have good intentions. Nobody goes to work and says, I'm going to do a bad job today. That's not what happens. But what happens is the processes are so bad that people, in the end, get so frustrated that they quit. So these are all things that you're now aware of. There's what you know, there's what you don't know, and there's what you don't know that you don't know. And what you don't know that you don't know is what's going to kill you. So today, we've just done some awareness training. So why? I don't know where Frank went, but why? Why do things go badly? Anybody has some answers here? Why do things go badly? Because, okay. So imagine you guys decided to get into the airport business, the airline business. You're going to fly planes. Pretty sure that within a year, all your planes would crash. Think about that. We get mad because we have to wait a few minutes because a plane got delayed because there was a storm. Anyway, be a little more forgiving to your airline business. But the fact of the matter is, if we were in the airline business, none of you would be sitting here next year because every one of your planes would crash. How many people want to dispute that? Okay, so we got a lot of work to do. So fundamentally, if you want to know why something went wrong, it's you. You're the problem. Because if you blame somebody else, can't fix it. So why was Johnny late? Why did the machine break down? Okay, so let's go with why did the machine break down? Somebody want to play this one with me? 5 whys. Why did the machine break down? More planning. Anybody else? So maybe you didn't take it in for service because you weren't proactive, so that was a problem. Why else? You bought a used machine to save money and it broke down. Okay, so we tried to save money again. okay? We bought a machine that was smaller than we needed, right? So, sorry? It's overworked, okay? So basically you're the problem. Every single time you are the problem. That's called responsibility. So once you recognize it's my fault, now you can fix it. There's only one exception to that. The person you hired has bad intentions, in which case you shouldn't do business with them, right? So if somebody doesn't have good intentions, we don't do business. If you have good intentions and you made a mistake, then it's a process problem. So the culture changes from it's your fault to how do we fix the problem? It's a learning opportunity, okay? Changes the culture of the business. So why? You're the problem, I guarantee it. I'm going to skip this one, but basically, at the end of the day, this tells you that money isn't the solution. We always hear, oh, get some more money, do this. If you can eliminate 40% of the waste in your business, I guarantee you're going to make money, way more money. Some of you, it might just be starting earlier. With respect to your equipment, you guys are all under-equipped. I look at hundreds of businesses and I look at how their equipment is organized. It's a disaster. You don't have enough equipment, you don't have the right equipment. Equipment are cheaper than people. Equipment is a mechanical employee. I'll give you an example. I hire somebody for $100,000. They work 10 years, okay? 10 years later, they quit. Cost me $1 million. They're mad at me because my processes were so bad. They sue me for severance, and it cost me another $100,000 in severance, okay? So as you get bigger, these things will happen. So it cost you $1.1 million. Now, if I buy a good piece of equipment for $150,000, not including food and repairs and those other things, and I bought something that was tough, it's going to cost me $150,000, and then 10 years later I can sell it for $60,000. What's cheaper, the equipment or the person? We're so worried about investing in equipment that's going to make us perform at a much higher level, because all we think about is savings. We think the only way to get from A to B is to save, cut. Cutting is important, but it's the least important. When you cut and you fire, it means you've done a bad job all the way along, or you have the wrong mindset. Very, very difficult to get rich saving. And it's a lot more fun to invest. Invest in yourselves, the mind. Invest in tools that make you more productive, right? So this is a cool thing that I came across. It's not typically taught as part of Kaizen. And I've got 3 glasses here. And these 3 glasses represent the people in your company. So what happens, especially if you get bigger, this person knows something, then they tell this person, and then this person may or may not hear about it, or they do tell this person, okay? So if you had 10 employees, I call them silos of stupidity. You're all running in your own lanes and there's no communication. So what happens is people make mistakes. You say, well, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you? Well, they didn't know. So whose fault is it? Back to the 5 whys, it's your fault. How many of you have weekly meetings? Raise your hands, hold them up high. Proud, hold them up. Okay, watch this. If I want to communicate, and I do this, we learn together, we improve each other's ideas, it happens faster. So meetings are critical. No meetings, you're in your own silo of stupidity. So I'm sorry I'm using harsh words, but I'm a harsh guy, so. But we can fix that. So meetings with agendas are the secret to learning at exponential speed. This is much faster than this. 5 years later, after you ruined a whole bunch of retaining walls. This person goes, oh my God, I should have done it differently. Well, if you had a meeting about how to build retaining walls and you answered the why are we going to build it this way, you will have way less problems. Why and when are very important. Wrong order, wrong outcome. If you don't know why, they'll always come back to you for more questions and more answers. I have an uncle, it's a true story. I'm on his yacht, it's a 150-foot yacht. I'm in a hot tub on the yacht, looking at a boat that's 20 feet long, bigger than any other boat that I've ever had. And I learned a lot from being on that yacht. I learned that this person who owns this yacht has everything working for him. And the reason is he has great systems. And I also learned that if you don't make a profit 3 years in a row, so you make a profit 1 year, not the next, it means you were lucky. So here's a question for you. Let's just say that you're in Ottawa and you have 150 days to make money. You don't work in the winter. Okay, you have a 10% profit. Okay. On what day do you start to make a profit? What day do you start to make a profit? So you have 150 days to make money, then the winter comes and you go to Bahamas, and you have a 10% profit. What day do you start to make money?
Day 1.
Okay, anybody else?
Day 135.
Well, at day 135 you got a problem. So both are wrong. Anybody else? Okay. Well, it's actually the 134th day, okay? Because up until that day, you're basically working to pay for materials, overhead, labor, whatever tiny salary that you pay yourself. So if you only have 15 days to make money, you better be efficient. The good news is, I just told you that most of you operate at 40% inefficiency or 60% capacity. This can be fixed. All right, I need the truth here. I need all of you to raise your hands. How many of you have never done a bad estimate? Raise your hands. How many of you have done an estimate where you thought it would take 3 days, but it took 5? Okay. So, there's a concept called first principles, okay? And the way this works is, everything has a foundation. Where do you start? What's the lowest I can go down to? So your biggest problem may be estimating. It could be your system, it could be your knowledge. The irony is that in estimating, believe it or not, if you use first principles, you will never screw up what that work area needs. You will never screw up what order it needs to be done in, ever, because you can sequence it. When you build a job, you should estimate the job the way you build it. So we estimate all our jobs from the back corner out. Okay? But the fact of the matter is that if you did an estimate and it took you, let's say you estimated 10 days, it took you 12, not good, because now you only have 13 days to make a profit. The truth of the matter is, though, you did this a bunch of times, right? So you started at 8 o'clock in the morning and you screwed up 5 estimates. So, well, 5 times 2 is 10. You got 5 days to make a profit. Wait a second. Then you got unlucky because it happened to be a late start to the season, so the ground was frozen. And then, on top of that, it rained more than usual. There goes your profit. Gone. So I could go on about estimating for weeks, but the fact of the matter is, whose fault is it? Put your hands up if you think it's you. Come on, take ownership here. We talked about ownership. Okay. Got to be proud about these things. So flow efficiency. We eliminate the silos of stupidity. We have meetings. Very useful. And this is the secret to having a great company. Process. Leadership. Okay? Where are we going? What should we be doing? What should we not be doing? And great people equals culture. You will have lower turnover, lower training costs. Your staff will be paid higher, okay? But you'll have a great place to work. Okay, next question. How many of you work Saturdays consistently? Raise your hands. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're going to get a great employee. They're going to have a daughter or son, and they're not going to be able to work Saturdays anymore. It's an unsustainable model. 6 days a week is working harder, not smarter. Harder is not the way to go. Smarter is the way to go. So we make big mistakes because we try and overcome our ineptitude by working more. You should work less and make more by being efficient. The sum of efficiency and productivity is proficiency, and proficiency is optimization, and optimization is factoring for the human equation, which means after about 44 to 50 hours, you become unproductive. Your morale goes down. It's unsustainable. Your staff quit. In Kaizen, Japanese philosophy, when you hire somebody, you hire the family. Okay? So, how many of you love working on Saturdays? Raise your hands. We've got a few. Okay. How many of you have spouses that love it that you work? Well, you might be working on Saturdays to get away from your spouse. So I understand. Keep it up. But I can assure you that divorce is far more expensive than a little investment in family time. And life is hard. So our goal should be to make it as easy as possible by filling gaps and creating the best processes that are sustainable. It's not sustainable. When you're 60 or 50 years old, you cannot work like that. When to grow. So you're all going to grow. The reason you're going to grow is that the more work you do, the more work you're going to get. Okay? The lower the price you have, the more work you're going to get. There's one exception. Apple. Apple charges more and sells more. How many of you have an Apple phone here? Raise your hands. Okay. So all of you are willing to pay a premium for Apple because it's easy to use. And let's face it, it's pretty cool to have an Apple, right? Nobody brags about their BlackBerry. So that's branding. Branding is Apple. 30% net profit. So much money they don't know what to do with it. Okay? Pretty good model to follow. Follow the Apple model. Charge more, be the best, create demand, create the brand. Great model. And it's all possible for all of you. It's not like somebody else can do it, but I can't. That's not true. Because first of all, the pool that you're in is so inefficient, and I could speak to thousands of people about this. Same story. So capacity is maximized. In other words, when you have a 3-man crew, let's say, how many of you have a 2-man crew? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. 2-man crew? Okay. Very, very unoptimized. Highly efficient, unoptimized. The reason is, here's an example. If I threw a backpack on one person's back and it was 100 pounds, that's equivalent to your overhead, it would be heavy to carry that all day. Okay? If I took the backpack and I divided it in 3 and put it over 3 people, it's much easier to carry. I can move around more quickly, okay? So the size of your crew may not mean that you're perfectly efficient, but your net outcome is greater than the sum of the 2 times 2, or 3 times 3, so 3 and 3, 2 and 2. Add it up, I guarantee you'll make more profit with that third person. And the reason is, your overhead's fixed, and you only need to achieve marginal cost. So in accounting, we're always talking about percent profit. Percent profit's important, but so is your marginal profit. So if you make more money at a lower percentage rate, that's okay, isn't it? More money, lower percentage, or higher percentage, lower profit? Which one's better? Well, we're gonna optimize. I'm not looking for perfection, I'm just looking for better. So now we have 2 people killing themselves. What happens when the second person's sick? It's a bad day at the office. Very bad day at the office. Can we train the next up-and-comer with 2 people in the office and grow the business? We cannot. 2 people in our industry is not a great model. The problem is that your guys are not very good teachers, and you have 2 people because you're afraid that the other person's going to be standing around. That person can stand around an awful lot, and the reason is, this is one of the other reasons. If I pay the extra person $200 to stand there and hold the shovel, okay, but I make an extra $20 every day, I'm further ahead by $100. Times 40 weeks is $4,000, right? Now, here's the other kicker. If let's say that person made me $100, so they cost me $200, they make you $100, do the math, big improvement. But what happens now is I do the work faster so I can do more work, right? It's not perfection, it's optimization. And if you understand that concept, you will understand how to grow your business. You need to maximize your talent. So before you go to 2 crews, before you start splitting off on 2 crews, you should have 5 people on the crew. Identify who your next leader is going to be, make sure they're proficient, and then go from a 5-person crew to a 3-person crew. Somebody's sick, it doesn't matter. You can move your chess pieces around. You increase your redundancy. Okay, in other words, you've got backups. Why do you think the airlines have 2 pilots? They have autopilot, they have a pilot, and they have a co-pilot. And what they do is they check each other, and they create a back and forth like a dance. And what happens is it becomes repetitive, it becomes normal, it becomes safer, it becomes reinforcing, right? You make sure you didn't miss something, right? You're focused. Most people try and grow their businesses because the work comes in, but they're not ready. So, what do? You raise your prices. In economics, there's a concept called equilibrium, okay, where things find their own balance. I guess in martial arts and in a lot of Asian culture, water finds its flow. It goes where the path of least resistance is. Same thing. So, we grow badly, we grow at the wrong time. So how many of you actually plan your planning? Who here actually has a plan to plan? Okay, well, we can fix that because those meetings are the foundation of improvement. If you don't have a plan to plan that you actually do, or if you have a plan but you don't plan it, you don't actually have the planning and the meeting, it's a disaster. You can never fix your problems. So this is your first step toward your journey of continual improvement. Branding is maximized. So I talked about Apple. When your trucks are the coolest and the signs are the coolest, and people can see the signs from the distance that they should be seen from. So I'll give you an example. You have a company and it's like ABC company. We do these 55 different things. It's all listed, okay? But I'm old, I can't see, so I'm like, what's that? And it's useless. The brand is the apple. So you can improve your visibility by having better branding than your competitors. Most people are horrible at branding themselves. It makes a big difference. The reason my company got to 50 people, and it's not larger, we chose not to grow. We have more work than we can possibly do. We said no. We raised our prices. We work in a certain area. Everybody recognizes our trucks, right? Because we're not all over the place. We differentiate ourselves, and we stand out. The other thing also is understanding money. It's the quick segue here, okay? Most of you do not have money falling out of your wallets. True or false? Who has money falling out of their wallets? Anybody? Because if you did, I got a landscaping company, I can help you. But the fact of the matter is, we don't understand what it's like to have a ton of money. And the analogy is, if you're an elephant, you do not understand the mouse. If you're an elephant, you don't understand the mouse. The mouse doesn't understand the elephant. Okay? Think of people with money as elephants. They do what they want, they go where they want, they trample whatever they want, they get what they want, right? So if you understand what an elephant wants, you can sell to the elephant. But if you're thinking like a mouse and selling to other mice, it's very difficult. Very difficult. So people buy things for two reasons. My partner will get into this in the afternoon. They buy things to solve problems, okay? And they buy things to make them happy. You do both. So, differentiation. What makes you guys different? Tell me, somebody here, tell me why you're different than everybody else. So that's marketing. Differentiation. It could be your design. It could be the brand and style of material that you use. I would rather see you do one thing right over and over again and create a brand than do a million different things. Does that make sense? So your differentiation is massive in terms of making you special in the marketplace. Otherwise, you're just a mouse. Vertical integration is another concept I won't get into today, but when you grow, the way you grow is you vertically integrate. And vertical integration is a concept where, for example, if you add equipment to your company, raise your hands if you think it adds to overhead. Raise your hands up high. You buy equipment, it adds to your overhead. Raise your hands up high. One person. Okay. I don't believe the rest of you, just so you know. So, there's two types of accounting, cost accounting and financial accounting. Financial accounting is for taxes. Cost accounting is for pricing. When you buy a piece of equipment, it's like an employee. It doesn't add to your overhead, provided they're not in the office. It doesn't add to your overhead, which means you can start to understand, well, if I bought this machine, what would the impact be on my labor costs? And once you understand that concept, you will see and be less afraid of buying equipment. So if I said to you that machine's $100,000, you say, oh my God, it's $100,000. And I would say, no, it's $10,000 a year for 10 years. And when you sell it, you get $50,000 back. How afraid are you of equipment right now? Anybody afraid of equipment? Not anymore. Okay, so vertical integration is understanding that when you add pieces to your business, it doesn't add to your overhead. So for example, anybody here do pools? Cool. So pools, same salesperson, same excavator, right? Same guys, generally speaking, and you've just added size to the sale without having to chase more mice. So they're now going after elephants over there, right? It's different. I do pools, you don't. Okay? Might be an idea. Might be an idea to consider that to grow my sales and be different. So the value of a good meeting: no one is left out and information is transferred fully. This is the secret. So I mapped this out myself. I had a company come in for consulting, and I have to tell you, I screwed up royally. It was a disaster. I had them come in 2 phases: team 1, team 2. What I should have said, you can't come at all unless you all come together. So the first team came in, I explained everything, they explained it, they went back to the office, and you see the bottom line with the zigzags? That's what they came back with, all excited with positive energy, and the other people felt left out. And even worse, their perspective was that, in fact, this can't be true. They're so happy. My life sucks here. They make my life miserable. That's what happened. So then I had the second team come in, and it was even worse, because they then came back excited, and everything was the same mess as before. So they heard 2 stories at 2 different times, and they heard different things. So remember, when you fix something, you have, in any business, there's what are called accountabilities. There are 1,200 accountabilities in every business. That's how insane it is. And those 1,200 accountabilities include things like ordering stationery, buying stamps, collecting money, fixing the machines, getting the licensing stickers. It's unbelievable, the list of things that have to happen. And there's so much frustration because the systems are so bad. People start to blame each other for bad things. But in fact, most of the problems are process problems. They're not people problems. So in Kaizen, one of the other philosophies is people, culture, process. People are either well-intentioned or not. Easy, one or the other, right? Your process is either good or not, right? And then the culture is formed off of that. And I threw in leadership, because leadership is the change agent that allows these good things to happen. The circle on the right is a great meeting. The circle on the right allows somebody like me to step away from my business. So let's say we had these glasses, okay? And in a year or 2, everybody knows everything that everybody else knows. Does that make sense? Everybody knows everything that everybody else knows. You have a good meeting, it's happening. So it doesn't go like this, and then I wasn't at the meeting, I didn't know. No, you're at the meeting and you're going to find out. So we go like this, and let's say you had 5 of these glasses, okay? Now I step away, what happens? Is that bad when I step away? Yes or no? Good or bad? Let's raise hands for good. Raise your hands. Good that I stepped away. We got 1. Bad that I stepped away. Raise your hands. Okay, you missed the lesson. So we had these meetings. We all know everything now, okay? And I step away. These people still know everything I know. There's nothing I can teach them, which means I can speak to you today instead of running my business. Those meetings mean that I can extract myself from the circle. Somebody else can get into that circle and learn everything they need to know as quickly and as efficiently as possible, rather than over years. So instead of getting experience over 20 years, this allows you to get the experience in 2 years, and I can remove myself, the new person goes in, and in 2 years they're up to speed. This person moves out, that person moves in. That's how valuable great meetings are. You guys don't plan, you guys don't have meetings, your pace of improvement will be so slow, it's glacial. So we can fix it. So on that note, I'm going to have you guys take a break, get some coffee for like 10 or 15 minutes. And if you want to ask me questions during the break, or Frank, that'd be great. You're all very quiet, you're very humble, I learned that, that's good. Thank you so far for your time. So we'll continue on after the break.